All right, everybody, happy Monday. Welcome into another new week here on Concrete Jungle New York Baseball Podcast. Live here on FingerLakes1.com, live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Senga Falls, New York. I'm Paul Russo, joined, as always, by Kyle Evans. Kyle, happy Monday, happy new week. What a weekend of baseball for the New York teams.
Yeah, it seems like, there's been a lot of different things going on around the league. Just a different style of game with all these rule changes, but I would say it's been pretty eventful.
Yeah, it's obviously there's a lot to kind of touch on here, but yeah, we saw that was actually something across baseball I kind of noticed this weekend was there was a lot of we had a strikeout on the pitch clock in Houston where Jose Abreu struck out, and it's been kind of nutty. You finally have some players kind of talking a little bit about some stuff. Bellinger, I saw. Cody Bellinger with the Cubs now, if you don't know. Wilkes came out and said, it's good to have hits back that were hits that weren't hits for a couple of years in regards to the shift being what I call limited at this point in the way that you can go about it. Because I tell you what, I don't know if it's something that you've noticed at all, but not to get too far down a different rabbit hole here, but there's a lot of shortstops kind of creep into that second base bag closer and closer here, so it's going to be interesting to really see here over the course of I'd say the next couple of weeks, kind of see how everything kind of shakes out, how the umpires kind of patrol it, and how these teams kind of really push the envelope on stuff like that.
Yeah, there's different things that I think teams are slowly learning where they're still kind of shifting. They're doing things that technically weren't listed on the rule books, so, they're getting away with it. But it will be interesting to see if Major League Baseball makes any announcements for adjustments. But right now, if you hit a ball hard on the ground, probably is going to find the hole with these new rules.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they were kind of aiming for, I guess, was to try and bring, stuff back closer to the players. But I don't know. I mean, there's been shifting going on since Ted Williams, arguably, if not the greatest hitter of all time. So
people's batting averages will change and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's dive into the Yankees here first. Kind of didn't preview much of all, but look, the Yankees take another series win. They've won every one so far this time against Baltimore. Another 2 of 3 there. To me, the storyline. Pitching was kind of secondary. I thought the offense was really the storyline here against a Baltimore team that I think a lot of people are kind of have circled as, I'd say, that dark horse this year. To me, they didn't do enough this offseason to kind of consider them a dark horse. I'd figure they probably will still be where about they were last year. But, you can't take them, for granted, right? I mean, we saw that. But we kind of figured, the quote-unquote bullpen game that was Friday ended up being the only Yankee loss, which I wouldn't say we kind of expected, but that's something that I do have kind of noted up here for in a few minutes to kind of discuss a little bit deeper. It's the case. But anyway, Judge again kind of powered the lineup. First multi-home run game of the year actually happened yesterday for him, but the thing I noticed, I don't know if it's something that I just didn't really pay attention to, but his average is well above 300 at this point. I think it's sitting somewhere in that 312-ish range. I could be wrong, but he's been a lot more, to me, aggressive earlier in the counts so far this year. He's not I wouldn't say he's kind of not waiting on pitches, but he's allowed himself to be more aggressive and take more opportunities when they present themselves. And I think that's a big thing coming off of the year they had last year, and I think that's actually a bit of a effect from last year, honestly, in a way, is the fact that jump early, jump often, because obviously pitchers are not going to be giving up mistakes to him or try not to. And for him, when this lineup's healthy, and again, this is going to be something that we talk here about in a minute. I mean, it's just there's going to be no easy outs this year the way it looks, in my opinion.
Yeah, right now it seems like things are going pretty well in terms of up and down the lineup. But one thing I want to talk about with Judge is this has actually been talked about all over social media this past weekend, but Judge got off to a slow start last year and still hit 62. Now he already has 4 home runs.
Yeah.
He's already on pace to do more than he did last year, which Still don't think it happens, but it's just crazy that he had like 1 home run in 10 or 12 games last year, in the first 10 or 12 games.
Yeah.
And now he already has 4 in 9 games. Like, what a start for him.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we were discussing, I mean, this was back in probably November, December, right, about, what would you hypothetically place his home run number at? And I remember saying like 40 and then people were just like, why'd you go that low? It's hard to duplicate what he did last year. The only player I can think of that backed up what they did the season prior in terms of home run was Barry Bonds. And even then, like, he was still, I think, like 15 or something like that off from the 73. So, I mean, it's incredibly hard to do. It's just insanely hard to do.
He does own the Orioles, though, so that helped.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, he just continued what he's been doing. I mean, even the Yankees were in on that joke this weekend. Like, I saw on the website, it was just like, Aaron Judge, another multi-home run a game against, guess who? Oh, Baltimore. Like,
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny at this point. Here's where I think we have a lot of awesome talking points, though, here. Let's discuss, I mentioned no easy outs. It's kind of funny because he ended up getting pinch hit for over the weekend at one point. But, like, Frenchie Cordero, he's batting .357 right now. And, look, I know it's a very small sample size, but if you were to tell me that he was going to be batting that, have a couple home runs this early on, be the impact that he's been so far, this is a lot better than I anticipated out of him. Really is. And this is a guy who, look, we mentioned a couple weeks ago when he signed, right? He's been a journeyman prospect, really, at this point. Has bounced from team to team, kind of looking for a spot, and to see what he's been doing early on, it's beyond a plus in my opinion.
Yeah, it's surprising to me. He's tied for the team lead in RBIs with 7. He's hitting .300 on the year. But one thing I did want to mention, and it still makes absolutely no sense to me, on that series opening game against the Orioles, he hit that 3-run home run in his first at bat.
Yeah, that's
why in the world was he pinched hit for and never got a second at bat in that game?
I was gonna. That's where I was going.
That is questionable managing right there.
Yeah. And we can maybe circle back to that point here in a second. But yeah, I don't know if it was just like a pure matchup thing, but yeah, I didn't understand why.
Clearly, analytics.
He's looked good though. Like every at bat, he's looked good. That's the other part with it, where it's like he's looked good every at bat. Like I don't know what was the thought process there.
Clearly, they're following analytics there because if somebody's hot, you don't pull them from the game.
Right.
That's crazy stuff right there.
Yeah. So I don't know. It does make you wonder, right, about, the Yankees kind of brought in some guys here in the offseason, Sabian, for example, who isn't an analytics guy, but, is meant to kind of be another voice in the room type thing, and I don't know. I don't get it. Let's shift focus here for a quick second to pitching. Let's highlight Johnny Brito here because he gets called back up, and I know like we talked last week, he couldn't get technically called back up unless there was an injury until the 15th. Well, they kind of used the Donaldson. Was Donaldson technically the way? So they used Loizaca's injury because it ended up being like a flurry of moves.
I guess they could have used either one, but
it ended up being like a flurry of moves all at the same time because the same time they put, Donaldson on the IL, which brought up Willie Calhoun as well. So just a lot of different moving pieces there at the same time. So either way, but look, another strong 5 innings for him, and ends up looking really good here. This is going to play a part here in the next kind of bits of conversation that we have here because, look, you look at yesterday, Nestor looked really good, and he's not really any part of any of this discussion per se, right? But, Cole's taking a lot of the headlines so far, but really a guy like, guys like Cortez and Johnny Brito here are just having themselves some seasons to get started here. They really are.
Yeah, obviously coming into the year, not a lot of people knew him, but a lot of people are going to get to know his name now. If it wasn't for him, this team's record might look a little different. I mean, he's 2-0 as a starting pitcher. He's the first rookie since El Duque to win his first 2 starts.
How about that?
So it's been a while since they've had a rookie step in and do something like this. So he's been huge, and not sure how much longer he's going to be in this rotation because Severino and Rodon are probably getting closer as we speak. But if he does make another start, I'm confident in him.
Yeah, we'll discuss the Severino portion of this here in a minute, and it's kind of made a guy here, and I didn't put it in the notes necessarily, but we do need to talk about it. Deivi Garcia is now being transitioned over into this Mike King, and they only use Mike King's name, but I also consider Clark Schmidt role where it's
multi-inning.
Yeah, and it's again another. There's going to be another couple of these guys who I'm going to end up plumbing in here, and I think we have to call kind of the lost prospects from this run. Florial's part of them. Garcia's clearly going to be part of them at this point where things just didn't pan out the way that they were supposed to pan out. Yeah. And a guy like Brito, sorry to interrupt, but a guy like Brito makes stuff like this, players like that, to not be expendable necessarily to ship them off, but makes their role expendable.
Yeah, it is kind of odd that the starting role didn't. I mean, Clark Schmidt is a starter right now, technically, but I don't think he's going to last as a starter in this league. I just think he's better in that multi-inning relief role, and I like that they're going to move Deivi Garcia to that because he's really struggled at the AAA level. So if he's struggling down there, I don't think he's going to really do much as a starter in the big leagues. So I do like what the Yankees are doing. It just sucks that those 2 guys that were supposed to be long-term starters didn't work out. Yeah,
and it's going to be wild because, like I said, I think there's still a couple other guys that might fall into that realm, and at least for me anyway. And every team kind of goes through this, right? Like, I don't want to make it sound like the Yankees are necessarily the only team doing it, but they're the ones who always stick out. Like I always think back to, and look, these guys end up, for the most part, having some really good big league careers, even if they were elsewhere. But Phil Hughes, Jabba Chamberlain, and then 2 other guys that were in the same pipeline with him at the time, being Ian Kennedy, who we know went on to have a really great career elsewhere, namely with like the Diamondbacks and Royals, and a guy by the name of Ross Ollendorf, who really fizzled out really quickly in Pittsburgh. They're all part of this alleged next great Yankee rotation type thing, and through whether it was their own doings or the Yankees' doings, which we've talked about with like Hughes and Chamberlain specifically in the past, they just never lived up to the hype. They end up being like I mentioned with them, they were lost prospects more or less in a way where they never lived up to the hype that they were going to be. I mean, they were brought up and it was going to be like those 4 and Ching-Ming Wong, I remember, were kind of like this next group of like 5 Yankee pitchers that were supposed to transcend, and they just never collectively did for one reason or another. So, and in this case, like I don't know who maybe the other 2 or so prospects might be. I kind of lean on a guy, and it sucks saying this, but like Oswald Peraza kind of sticks out to me in a way at the moment, only because like he was the odd man out with the Volpe thing. You know what I mean? And maybe a guy like, only because he got hurt, a guy like Luis Gil, where who knows where he's going to fit now when he comes back from Tommy John. So who knows? It's fascinating to me, kind of seeing how this has really played out in real time for the Yankees to start the season.
Yeah, and Johnny Brito, I don't think a lot of people know, he is 25 years old.
Yeah.
He's been in the minor leagues for a long time, and he's finally got his shot, and he's doing all he can to try to stay here. But with the amount of talent on this roster, when the guy's coming back, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean that's where guys say, and obviously his sample size is even smaller. A guy like Ian Hamilton, almost in a way, you kind of have to look at him because he's been the definition of journeyman, right? More or less like a quad A player the bulk of his career, has looked good with the Yankees so far. Kind of like one of those Matt Blake type prospects, not prospects, case situations where has looked really good in the moments he's had, but you still have to kind of okay, base it off of where he's been in the past, and, numerically he might not be able to keep it up.
Yeah, he's only pitched in 17 big league games.
Yeah.
And he's 27 years old.
Yeah. And like I said, he's been kind of the definition of a quad A guy. He's stuck on guys' 40-man's rosters, but they never call him up for there's got to be a reason, type thing. I remember him, I think it was with the White Sox. Gosh, it has to be about 3 or 4 years ago now at least. Where, like you said, Kyle, he was there for a handful of games, but that was pretty much it, and off and on to his next stop.
He has allowed just 1 run over 3 2/3 innings with the Yankees so far, so maybe Matt Blake did work his magic again. Hopefully, that's the case. All
right, we kind of dwelled on that portion of it a bit too long. Do have a Luis Severino update. He ended up throwing, I guess, from 120 feet last week, which this is part of it where we mentioned it last week a little bit with Boone and Donaldson, and, it's not that serious, not that severe, as now Donaldson, as we know, is on the IL. But we haven't gotten a ton of Severino updates until really the past few days. Apparently he's pretty much been throwing since the beginning of the month in some way, shape, or form. But has built up, was throwing flat ground at 120 feet on Friday. Was supposed to have a bullpen session that's now scheduled for today. Now pushed to today. Was supposed to be yesterday. But because of scheduling, I know a lot of people are trying to make it out to be a bigger thing than it is. Look, guys, yesterday was a getaway day. The Yankees are in Cleveland today for a game. It's just a scheduling issue. It's nothing else, nothing beyond that. Stuff like this kind of happens through the course of a season.
And he still played catch on the field.
Right. But he's going to have a bullpen session today. And if things go good, I think this is really where we see him kind of ramp up probably quicker than even we anticipated. At the moment, they're still classifying him as being on track to return later this month or the beginning of May at the latest. But look, Kyle, you mentioned it, right? Where are some of these people going to fit? Because Severino's going to be coming back here. Rodon, we haven't had a good update on him in a little bit, but, signs are pointing to him being ahead of schedule anyway, health-wise, returning. So this is a big plus for, to me, what will be probably the Yankees' fourth starter, more than likely, at this point.
First thing you do is kick Clark Schmidt out of the rotation.
Ooh.
And you move him to the bullpen. Yeah.
Well, this is where we'll get into that in the Cleveland series here in a second. But yeah. So and we know what Severino can do. My parents were telling me, because they were down at spring training for a day, that my dad's seen plenty of baseball. He said Severino looked about as good as he ever has seen, and probably, he said in all honesty, probably better than a couple other pitchers that they saw work that day.
Yeah, Aaron Boone did say in spring training that this is the greatest shape he's ever seen him in. So it just sucked that he had to get injured. But, the good thing is he might not miss as much time as we originally thought, and hopefully gets back and stays healthy.
Yeah. So with that in mind, we've teased it enough here. Yankees in Cleveland today, Monday through Wednesday, 3-game series. Herman, Cole, and Clark Schmidt all slated to go for the Yankees. Tonight's a 6:10 first pitch. You could already mention Herman gets a nod there for the Yankees. He'll go against the ace of the Guardians, Shane Bieber. Yet to get a decision on the year, but still up to his usual stuff, a 2.25 ERA to get going on the year. Tomorrow, 6:10 first pitch as well on Garrett Cole, 2-0, 0.73 ERA. That feels nice to say.
Yep.
He'll go against the rookie Hunter Gaddis. No decision on the year, but 3.72 ERA, again, part of what we call the Cleveland pipeline at this point for pitching. And then Wednesday, getaway game at 1:10 on Clark Schmidt, yet to get a decision, but 9.45 ERA against Aaron Savali, who's looked really good so far on the year, 1-1 at 2.84 ERA for him. That Wednesday game is really the question mark for me. And look, the 2 games that the Yankees have had so far this year, the bullpen games, have not been. They've been literally 2 of the worst games that they have played this year, as a unit. Let alone pitching, but as a unit.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone knows this stat either, but I was looking at his last start. Clark Schmidt has never won a game when he started.
Eesh.
And if you watched him against Baltimore on Friday, he doesn't have he doesn't put away hitters when he gets ahead in the count, and he cannot get a left-hander out. The left-handers were like 4 for 6 at one point in that game, just absolutely hammering it. All the exit velocity from the left-handed batters are way up. It just he doesn't have that starter stuff. I like him in a 1 or 2 inning relief role where he's not facing a lineup the second time through and stuff like that. Just not a fan of him starting, and I think Wednesday will be a loss. And it's unfortunate. I mean, they don't really have anything else. They can't really do anything else right now because of the injuries, but I can't wait for some of those starters to get back.
They can do something else here, in my opinion, but...
What's that?
I would just, they're so focused on having him only go X amount of time, just, let him go. Either that or, do Mike King there. Here's my issue with this. The bullpen game, and this is a collective unit, collective as in the whole MLB. Even the Rays don't do bullpen games anymore. They've kind of moved off from it. By the way, that's Rays count number 1 on the podcast. I have a second one coming up when we get into the Mets stuff because we also have, I think, my first rant on the year coming up.
About the Rays?
It's
good.
It's more about the Mets.
Oh,
okay,
about the Rays.
And it's not even about the Mets. It's really about the fan base. Anyway, and I know it's only temporary, but I go back to a guy like Phil Hughes in Jabba, where it's the Yankees kept playing these stupid games with them, where it's you're starting one day, but now you're back to being our setup guy to now you're just our bullpen guy to but you're back to being a starter. You're doing more harm than good here, and let alone your actual on-field results and product, but you're just harming the guy longevity-wise,
Yeah,
But
I just want to
especially, by the way, not to interrupt again, I apologize about that, but his matchup in Aaron Savali, when he's healthy, he's looked really good. And again, he's healthy to get off the year this year, and he's looked really, really good.
Yeah, Clark Schmidt, I also want to note that, I do like Clark Schmidt. I just don't want to see him as a starter anymore. He's 27 years old. He hasn't figured out how to get left-handed batters out in this league. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why he's been up and down to AAA since he's, been a major league player. And I don't know. I don't know why the Yankees... I think eventually the Yankees might move on from him as a starter, but it's just frustrating that the same mistakes continue to happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But maybe they'll find a way. Maybe the offense will carry that game. But I see the Yankees winning 2 out of 3 in that series.
Yeah, I'm with you there, 2 of 3. But I could see, honestly, the Yankees dropping this. I mean, this is a Cleveland team that...
Tonight's going to be tough.
They've slightly underperformed this year, but at the same token, I mean, they're winning games when they probably shouldn't be early in the season like this. So, can't say I'm like that. I mean, this is a Cleveland team that I even have pinpointed for, really, to be honest, beyond October expectation this year. So, potential beyond October expectations. So you can't take them lightly. Obviously, look, they're heavy hitters. I don't mean that offensively because we know what Jose Ramirez, right, Andres Jimenez, and so on and so forth. But I mean Bieber, they see Savali, and if you get to that bullpen, good luck. Stevens and Clase are just you can't beat it's hard to beat a 1-2 combo like that. It really is.
Yep.
So, all right, let's move on to the Mets. Hey, they did what they had to do. This is a big series in the fact to kind of right the ship early on in the year a little bit. Taking 2 of 3, they downed the Marlins at Citi Field, and the bats finally got alive here a little bit. Alonso kind of took the center stage of it, but I thought Lindor looked really good as well throughout the weekend. Starling Marte, who we'll talk about more in just a couple minutes, had some really great moments as well offensively. But really, Pete Alonso, your really backbone power-wise and drive-wise, really finally got alive here to get going, and really when the team needed it most, at least early on in the season here.
Yeah, tied for the league lead in home runs with 5, 11 RBIs on the season, leads the league in that category. Seems like he's the only one that hits every single game. But one thing I do find interesting is that all 5 of the Mets wins have come against the Marlins. Remember the first series of the year, they won 3 or 4?
Yeah.
So I do think the Mets are fine. I'm not panicking, I'm not a fan, but I wouldn't panic if I was a fan, like a lot of people are doing. But this Padres series at home is big. I mean, they got to start beating teams that aren't the Marlins. They should have never got swept by the Brewers.
All right, so I guess this is where we clear the space then for me here. I'm kind of sick, even though I talk about how you want to right the ship, and get things going here early. For the most part, teams are now within this 7 to 10 games played. If you're judging everything off of this 10-game run for the Mets, and this is what drives me up a wall with some fans, and it's not just, say, Mets fans, but, fans of different teams across different sports. Go into a cave and do it. I'm sick of, the collective of just, it's just the usual Mets stuff going on here, and they're not, and blah, 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 and I don't care. You're 10 games into the season, okay? 10. If you want to judge everything off of 10, the Tampa Bay Rays are going 162-0. Is that going to happen? No. It's freaking baseball. They're going to lose probably 9 straight games at some point in June because that's just the way things operate. And it's just one of those things, I'm sick of it. Look, baseball is better when both the Yankees and the Mets are doing well. It's better when both the Cubs and the White Sox are doing well. When these big market teams these big markets that have multiple teams are doing well. I would say Los Angeles, but the Angels are down in Orange County technically, and it's the Angels. But it's always better when these teams that have the personality, right, that have the charisma, are doing better, right? And it kills me that the fans, year in and year out, are always like this doom and gloom nonsense. It pisses me off, to be honest. You know what I mean? It's just it's sports. It happens. Just be happy with what you got. You got 2 or 3 from the Marlins, okay? This was what you needed early on in the season. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit here in a way, but this is what the team needed, right? It was a good 2 or 3 series that you got from the Marlins. You played good collectively overall. Be happy here. And, there's going to be, there are positive headlines here that, I want to talk about here even more here in a second with them. But, they just want to, sweep them under the rug because their freaking Napoleonistic mindset forces them to be looking doom and gloom like this. It just, pisses me off.
Yeah, I could see if they're 2-8. They just got swept by the Miami Marlins, but at home. But they didn't. They won the series. It is a very long season, but I also do, I guess, understand where people do come from. But I don't get the negativity every day. But as a competitive person, you do want to win every day, but it's not going to happen realistically. But when you're winning series, you shouldn't complain. If you're losing series, then I can see you complaining.
Yeah, it's one of those things this is one of the headlines I do want to talk about here, and a positive one is Kodai Senga again. Great start. Okay, goes 5+, gives up an earned run, whatever, but I think it was another 6 strikeouts, or either way, looked really good. And this is a guy who, you're going to need to be banking on anyway because we're going to talk about Carrasco here in a second as well, but look at the positive that you got right there with Kodai Senga, a guy who literally has his ghost fork emblem stitched on his webbing, which I noticed for the first time this weekend. This is a guy who you should be rallying around and, in all honesty, making one of your faces of the team. Instead, it's doom and gloom and quote unquote. But Kodai Senga looks phenomenal. He really looks phenomenal. And I know there'll probably be some coming back to earth stuff. That's the way it is with players that we've seen in the past anyway come over from, whether it's the Central League, which is where he came from. Excuse me, but he's looked good. He's looked really, really good.
Yeah, he has looked good, but I will tell you what fans are still going to complain about. Ready for this one, Paul?
Boy. Oh, boy.
Both of his starts have come against the Miami Marlins
I
lineup.
don't care.
This is
Marlins lineup that you need to be worried about, though.
So, I mean, yeah, he's off to a great start, but the fans, that don't like him are still going to say something like that. So, we'll see when he faces a different lineup, but he is off to a good start.
And they need it right now because Carlos Carrasco has looked off. It's actually kind of funny. When doing the notes and doing some research, they're kind of pinpointing his changeup to be the biggest trouble spot. It's just not kind of working right. I know his ERA is plus 11 right now.
Both home runs he allowed came on the slider yesterday.
Yeah. It sucks because you really need him. And look, I think he'll get it right. He's a veteran pitcher and he's good. But if there was one actual worry, it's got to be around him, in my opinion.
Yeah, 11 earned runs in 2 starts. Yikes. But the thing about him is he has faced 2 different teams. The Brewers have hit him hard.
Right.
And then the Marlins have hit him hard. The Marlins hit him, put some more damage on him than the Brewers did, which is, I never expected that to happen. But yeah, it's been rough for him. He is a veteran pitcher. You would hope he figures it out, but if he doesn't, he's not going to be in this rotation much longer.
Yeah, that's the wild part about it, right, is, Verlander's going to come back, and I think still presumably Magel gets the boot out of the rotation. But, I mean, if he still pitches good, and this is something that I think we can kind of discuss now because, you look at what Syracuse had a phenomenal week last week, and we'll obviously touch more on that in just a minute. But, a guy like Jose Buto's looked phenomenal down in AAA so far to start the year. He is gonna be, probably knocking at the door of making some sort of big league appearances this year. Magel's looked good through 2 starts. And, we know what Verlander is. Verlander has the second best ERA of the past, I think it's 18 months or something like that. So I would assume he's fine for now. But yeah, if we get to this point in May where he has another 3 or so starts under his belt, and he's 0-5 with still a bloated, I'd say plus 7 ERA, because it's going to take a few starts to get that thing back down at least below double digits, right?
Yeah.
You have to start wondering at what point do you just, I wouldn't say pull the plug. He's a veteran guy. Man, he's been in the big league so long now. I don't think you can technically option him necessarily, but yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation to be in with a vet guy like him who, really to be fair, kind of was one of the 2 pitchers that kept the Mets season afloat last year for as long as it did.
Yeah, I mean, he is coming into the year. He was, one of your worst starters in terms of on paper, but I don't think anyone expected 11 runs and 2 starts.
And it's tough to say worse, too, because it's not like he's bad, You look at last year, he wasn't bad at all.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been a big fan, but, he could be Clark Schmidt. So,
jeez.
Although Clark, I guess, has pitched better than him because he's given up 11 runs in 2 starts, and Clark's only given up 7. So
true, I guess.
But yeah, the Yankees and Mets are having, I guess, some trouble with the back end of the rotation. You could say a little bit.
Yeah, they both are. Yeah. I don't know. It's the beauty of it. Like I said, it's the beauty of it only being 10 games into the season, right? Is there's plenty of time to figure it back out.
Yep.
All right, so rematch of the 2022 wild card round, Mets and the Padres. Mets hosting San Diego at Citi Field, starting tonight, 7:10 first pitch. Scherzer, Peterson, and Mago get the starts. Tonight, 7:10 on SNY or MLB Network, Yu Darvish versus Max Scherzer. Talk about one of those matchups. Here we are again, one of those ones that you sit down and you definitely hope it's a pitcher's duel anyway. Tomorrow night, 7:10 on SNY or TBS. Young Ryan Weathers, no decisions on the year for him, a 3.60 ERA for the Padres, going against David Peterson, 0-1, a 6 flat ERA. And then Wednesday, another getaway game, 1:10 first pitch on SNY or MLB Network. TBA for the Padres against Tylor Mago, I just call him his brother's name, Tylor Mago, there. So this is an interesting Padres team. Looked very feisty against Atlanta this weekend. I would assume that slot that's TVA, that's usually Nick Martinez's spot they've gone with. So I kind of lean Mets here in all honesty 2-3. But like I said, this is a plucky to say the least Padres team. I mean, them in Atlanta had an offensive feast over the weekend. I don't know if you saw any of it, but when Hyesung Kim's hitting home runs, I mean, this is quite the time to be a Padre fan early in the year. So I'm over 2-3 though for the Mets, only because I think they have their 3 starters just nailed in stone, and we know that they're all technically starters, so they'll at least get 5 in and carry on.
Padres win the series.
Oh, wow.
2 out of 3. And Met fans go insane.
You're doing it to them, eh?
And this will be a point in the season where the Mets will wake up, and this will be talked about in September as the point of the season where, the Mets turn things around.
Forgot to mention, by the way, I forgot to mention Starling Marte. Day-to-day right now with a neck sprain. Slid in the third yesterday and kind of ended up colliding his head with Gene Segura. It sounds like it's not that serious, right? I mean, I don't know. It's probably one of those things to me where, because he stayed in the game for a brief moment and then exited, so he should be fine. I'm guessing they'll give him a couple days here just to, make sure everything's good. But day-to-day, that just makes it to me sound like, okay, if his neck is tight tonight, he just won't go. But if he's good to go tomorrow, he'll be in the lineup tomorrow.
Yeah, he should be fine unless you're Frank and he thought he broke his neck.
I mean, I wasn't going to say a name out loud through my whole rant, but yeah, I mean, the head honcho there is kind of banging the drum on that. Speaking of Frank, his beloved Syracuse Mets take 5 of 6 from Rochester and strike first
Stunning.
in the Thruway Cup. I figured it'd be Rochester, I said, would take the series. Bob, wrong. You said it'd be was it a true split, I think you said? I can't remember exactly.
I thought I said Rochester 4 out of 6.
Oh, maybe, yeah. But either way.
That was way off.
Either way, Syracuse has looked really great this year. So through all of this, Syracuse is now 6-3 and has sole possession of third in the International League, which is big the way it's structured this year. Rochester bottoms out. They're 1-7 and 20th, dead last in the International League. So not great right now there. But Syracuse, I kind of tease a little bit, a guy like Jose Buto, but you want to talk about a team that's just collectively firing all cylinders. Mark Vientos is batting .357 right now. Ronnie Murciano is leading the team in home runs. He actually owns every offensive lead category besides average and stolen base. Murciano does. So, I mean, they're looking really, really good, at least through this first few games on the year, especially offensively. But pitching really kind of stepped up in a big way and held the Red Wings down, because the Red Wings, in their own right, Matt Adams really kind of powering the lineup right now. And the Red Wings have some reinforcements coming. Jacob Lewis began his rehab assignment with Wilmington, so he should be back within the next coming days of some sort. So that's positive news there. But Rochester has a lot to work on, while Syracuse, for the time being, looks like they don't need to really change much.
Yeah, I'm looking at the scores right now. I didn't realize it was this bad for Rochester.
Yeah.
They were held to 1 run 3 of the 6 games, and then the other 2 games they were shut out.
Yeah.
So they had that one big game where they put up 11. But other than that offense was very quiet, which is shocking, because I think we've said it all along that we thought Syracuse's pitching might be a little issue again, but it's either the offense is just really bad right now or Syracuse's pitching has gotten better.
And it could be a little bit of both, right? I mean, this is a Syracuse pitching staff that's predominantly really young. I mean, you can tell by, like we keep going back to a little bit, right? The way the coaching staff is set up, right? It's these younger guys, for the most part, who have that analytic background, who have the number-driven background, who have been predominantly working with this group all the way through the minor league system and have kind of followed them through in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's a little bit of both, though, in all honesty. It's early in the year, to go back to that point, that, I have a hard time believing, say, Rochester continues just to be that horrid, and I don't want to make it sound like I don't think Syracuse is just going to drop dead here, but it's an offense that last year, they have a decent amount of returning people, especially on offense, that just didn't show up last year, but that's baseball sometimes, right? And anyway, looking ahead, Syracuse, they're traveling down I-81. They play Scranton Wilkes-Barre this week, and it's a Rail Rider team that we see with the Yankees, obviously, and it's a Rail Rider team that's 5-4. I think they were expecting to be a little bit better themselves, and maybe this is I think this is going to be a pretty good barometric gauge here early for Syracuse. If they are able to go out and get, say, a true split against Scranton Wilkes-Barre, I think that's a big plus for the direction they're going on the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, they better watch out for Jake Bowers. Yeah. 3 home runs and 5 RBIs in 8 games. Just off to a really good start at the plate.
Is Jake Bowers the Matt Adams of the Rail Riders?
Yeah, I would probably say so. He might lead this team in home runs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Syracuse probably still wins the series. Scranton's not the same team as they kind of been for the last several years.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially mainly for me, it's pitching where you kind of really see that glaring element of that.
Yeah, just not the same kind of talent that they once had, with a lot of guys up now with the Yankees and just, trades and stuff like that. So it might not be as hard as we think for Syracuse to win that series.
Meanwhile, for us up here along I-90, didn't have to wait long for the second round of the Thruway Cup to take place because that's happening this week in Rochester as they host the Bisons. Look, it's supposed to be a really phenomenal week. I know I'm going to the game Friday night in Rochester. I'd say take advantage of that. I think we've all seen the weather forecast for this week at this point. It's going to be great. So I'm looking for some positive stuff, though, for Rochester. Like I said, I don't know if Jacob Luke gets back to Rochester this week, but that'll be a big addition back. And I know they have a couple other guys that are on the injured list at the moment. So, look, I would imagine, like I said, it's baseball. They got to get a win here eventually, but we saw what happened last year with them in June, so who knows. But I think they split. But that Buffalo team's an interesting one. They're a lot like Scranton where, they aren't the same team. They're Toronto's team. Some of the guys there who have been there now at this point, they're probably just quad A type guys, And I think my heart's trying to tell me more so than my head that, Rochester can get 3 against them, but maybe that's just not the case.
Yeah, I think Rochester only gets 1, unfortunately. But this is just random, Paul, but I'm going to bring it up. I'm looking through the schedule, and all night games now for Rochester are either 6:05 or 6:45. That's news to me. I just went through the whole schedule.
Wait, once you got out of the school year, they don't push back to 7:05?
I went all the way to September. 6:45 is the latest night game.
Huh.
That's new to me. I mean, it's not a major difference.
I don't hate it, though.
It's just a little surprising.
I don't hate it.
Especially in the summer, I don't get starting a game at 6 o'clock, but whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I just want to bring that up because it caught me off guard. Because I wanted to see what time Friday's game was. It was a 6:05 start. And then isn't that kind of rare, an afternoon game on Wednesday in the middle of a series like that?
What time is it?
Oh, it's $5 ticket day. It's 105.
No, not really. They usually have a day game somewhere in there during the week. Usually it's Wednesday or Thursday, yeah. I was about to say, if you were to say it was 11:05, I would say, it's got to be one of the education days.
Oh, yeah, that's the 27th,
yeah.
Career and Sports Day.
Yeah.
11:05 a.m.
Yeah, so that'll happen, but that's minor league baseball for you. But
Gonna get up early, take some BP in the cage.
I went to a couple of those education games, though. They were pretty cool. I mean, it gives you the backdoor element of what makes, especially minor league baseball, kind of tick and go. So it's always fun stuff. So it sounds like I'm the more optimistic of us here, even though it's my heart doing it. My head certainly agrees with you, I think, in this situation.
I just feel like Buffalo's kind of, I guess, maybe owned is the right word. They've had a lot of success against them.
Yeah.
Buffalo seems to always have a really good team, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything can happen. It's early. We'll see.
Yeah. All right, so that'll do it for Concrete Jungle for today. Thanks for watching live. If you can't watch live, catch up anytime on YouTube, Spotify for podcasters, and Spotify itself. We will be back Thursday where hopefully we discuss some more series wins for the Yankees and Mets, and we'll recap everybody on how Rochester and Syracuse have done. So we'll talk to you then.